So Bernie Sanders is taking a stand against our colossally bloated military budget. He released a video as to why he's going to vote no on it.
I wanted to tell you briefly why I'm voting against the defense bill, which is $778 billion. I find it very strange that many of my colleagues are very worried about the deficit and the national debt when it comes to the needs of working families, the children, the elderly, the sick, the poor. Oh my God, we can't afford to do anything. Deficit is so big, national debt is so big. But wait a minute, when it comes to the military-industrial complex and the defense bill, $778 billion for 1 year, and that is $35 billion more than Trump's last budget, $25 billion more than President Biden wanted. Well, that's okay. We'll pass that. Don't worry about the deficit defense bill. Then, on top of that, what is likely to happen is they're going to attach another piece of legislation called the Competitive Act. And that is $250 billion. And in the midst of that, there is $52 billion going to a small number of microchip companies. Now, I think we do have a microchip crisis in this country, very important. We want to produce them in America, but you just don't hand out corporate welfare to a handful of very profitable companies. You make sure there are some strings attached so the taxpayers don't get ripped off. And oh yeah, I forgot, also attached to this bill is $10 billion going to our good friend Jeff Bezos to help him get to the moon. So there you have a bill loaded with corporate welfare, significantly adding to our deficit. Very little discussion about it, especially from the so-called deficit hawks. Thank you.
Why is he the only person saying this incredibly obvious stuff? We had a media meltdown and a politician meltdown over the initial Build Back Better bill, which was $3.5 trillion over a decade, $350 billion a year. This is, what, $750 billion a year? And Bernie's the only one saying anything about it? See, the thing that they do is they say, look, we're not going to, go back and forth on the debt and the deficit when it comes to military spending, because military spending is grandfathered in. It's national security is such a priority that it's ridiculous to talk about the debt or the deficit and as if that can prevent us from spending on the military. Well, my response to that is very simple. Why is military spending off the table from a moral and ethical perspective, but what? Giving everybody in the country health care isn't off the table from that perspective? So in other words, we're just cool with up to 45,000 people dying every year because they can't get health care. We're cool with that. We're just cool with about 30 million people not having health insurance. We're cool with that. I'd argue low wages, the fact that the minimum wage is not a living wage, and we have millions of people in this country working full-time jobs and not making enough money to survive. That's not a moral outrage to you? You don't grandfather in maybe subsidies for those folks? No, it absolutely is a moral priority, and I'll go a step further. With the military, the amount we're currently spending, it is not some sort of moral and ethical priority that we have to do it, and let's not talk about the deficit. Why? We spend more than the next, dozen biggest countries combined, and most of them are our allies? I got news for everybody. We can cut our military in half, and still have the biggest military in the world by far. So what are we talking about here? We have 900 military bases around the world. We're currently bombing 7 different countries. There's a shadow war going on in Africa. Nobody ever voted on that. And that you're just supposed to shut off your brain. Don't talk about the debt. Don't talk about the deficit. Don't talk about money. But God forbid you propose a program. Ready for this? You know how much free college would cost? Bernie proposed a free college bill when he ran for president. You know how much that costs? $60 billion. Just the increase in the military budget from year to year, could fund a free college program for the entire country. But if you bring up free college, like, oh my God, how are we going to pay for it? The debt and deficit. But with the military, shh, nobody says anything about that. By the way, I love he brings up, there's $10 billion in this thing for Jeff Bezos. $10 billion for Jeff Bezos. Why? You should be taxing that guy to the high heavens. You should be taking $10 billion from him and using that for childcare or universal pre-K. Are you out of your mind? That's the thing. When you're wealthy, you have these connections, you have lobbyists. When you're, the head of this giant corporation, you buy the government. And so effectively, what Jeff Bezos has done, among many others, Elon Musk got a $4.9 billion subsidy for his companies. You basically buy the ability to loot the treasury if you're wealthy. That's what we have in this country with open corruption. But Bernie Sanders, to my knowledge, is the only person looking at this military budget going, of course I'm not going to vote for this. All you idiots who are yelping about the debt and the deficit, now you're saying nothing about it, so you're colossal hypocrites. And look at where the money's actually going, $52 billion for corporate welfare, for microchips. I'm in favor of, reinvigorating American manufacturing. But why is that in the military bill? And why can't we debate that in a standalone way? Like, what are we doing? What is this? What is this? See, they take everything they view as a moral priority, grandfathered in moral necessity. But the fact of the matter is, it's not any of those things. The reason why Bernie's the only one bucking the trend in the narrative here is because the military-industrial complex has bought Congress and the Senate and the presidency. I mean, for Christ's sake, the guy who's the defense secretary was on the Raytheon board or some shit. Or was it Lockheed Martin or Raytheon? It was one or the other. Taking millions of dollars from a defense contractor. That company makes more money the more we're at war. So guess what? The defense secretary is going to be like, maybe war's a good idea. Of course they're going to be like that. That's where all the incentives in the system are pushing. This is what happens, guys. If you wonder why they don't care about homeless people. Why? Because the homeless lobby has 37 cents in a Pop-Tart, and they haven't bought our politicians. So nobody cares about that issue. Nobody actually tries to fix it. But if you're Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, you give money to politicians, and they do your bidding. And that's it. And that's the way our system works. It's open corruption. It's disgusting, and it needs to stop now. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.